afternoon, everyone. Mary Sloan here with another episode of Inspirational Influencer News, People Making a Difference. And my guest this afternoon, Ellen Violette, is certainly someone who is making a difference. She is a Grammy-nominated songwriter and three-time award-winning book coach, including being named on one of the top 20 book coaches of 2022 by Coach Foundation. So if you need a book, this is somebody you want to talk to. She helps high achieving trainers, coaches, speakers, and founders write a professional nonfiction book, make it a #1 bestseller, and use it to make a bigger impact, make more money, and leave a lasting legacy. Her company, Books Open Doors, and I noted it was trademarked because I'm always looking at branding. So Books Open Doors also offers ghostwriting and publishing services to make getting a book out as easy as possible for her clients. Ellen has 18 years experience and is the author of 9 books, including one she wrote with Jim Edwards, and is a contributor to 4 more bestsellers. She's also a former regular contributing to Publishing Magazine. Her clients have shared the stage with President Obama, Kevin Harrington, Marianne Williams, and more, and have been featured in Forbes and other magazines, and they've spoken on stages across the globe. So clearly, she is the person you want to see about getting out, getting published, and getting your book known. So, Ellen, what is it that you really want people to know today is the most important thing that they can do to really get their book out there and get it going?
Well, first, what I want people to know is that if they have a business and they haven't written a book, they need to write a book. That's the first thing. A lot of people think, well, I'm making money now, so I don't really need a book. But what a book does is it gets you on bigger stages, it gets you bigger opportunities, it makes you more money, and it gets you these opportunities. Like I said, people show up in magazines, get different things that would not have happened if they did not have a book. And you can't get on TV, if you don't have a book. I mean, how many times do you see people getting interviewed on TV? They always have a book.
Yeah, I can tell, I mean, it's sort of like, well, okay, let's send me a copy of your book and we'll talk. Mm-hmm. Oh, whoops, I don't have one. Well, write one and then we'll talk.
Right.
So what do you ask when people want to write a book and come to you?
What do I ask?
Yeah, what kind of questions do you ask them?
I ask them what their business is about, and then I ask them what challenges they're having, what their goals are, and then I see how I can help them if I can.
And do people come with you with an idea for a book, or is that something that you kind of work on together?
Sometimes they have a specific idea in mind, and other times they say, I have no idea what to write about. But it's so funny. I was just talking to a woman the other day, and she was laying out exactly what's in her mind. And she told me exactly what the book was, not only what the book was, but the title. And then I said, well, that's the book. And she's like, oh, thank you. Sometimes it's like people get this thing in their mind where they're just thinking and thinking, and they can't quite get to the fact that they already know.
Yeah, well, I guess if you think that it's something out there and it's really big and it's going to be something different and something you don't know, mm-hmm. then the fact that you kind of have the book all kind of planned out and written and everything is kind of like, oh, is that what a book is? Oh, it's like sometimes we just, it almost reminds me of when you see little kids trying to walk through doors or things. And, mm-hmm. and, the first time it's kind of like, oh, that's all it is. Oh, you just pull it and, oh, yeah. It's like,
well, I think there's a few things that happen. One thing is people overthink it because they're afraid to get started. So it's easier to just keep kind of ruminating about it and telling yourself that you don't know when you really do know. So that's really one of the biggies. And then the other one is I don't know how to get started. But, you know, it's not just about getting started. I mean, one of the things that I see that really disturbs me is the way so many book coaches and authors who have written a book tell other authors how to get started. So for me, my program is the 3-day bestseller program. And what makes it easier than so many other ways is some of the things that I have people do or not do. And so if you want to write a book quickly, the 3 secrets are you've got to do the marketing research first, so you know who your market is, what they want, what problem you can solve for them, and then where that sweet spot is of all those things that work together. Because you can never have a bestseller if people don't want what you're writing about. So that's number 1. Number 2 is then creating an outline. And I'm always amazed when people don't create an outline. And I say to them, well, why didn't you create an outline? You go, oh, well, I thought I had it in my head. But then when I started writing it, I started getting lost. And I go, you know, it's such an easy thing to do. I don't know why people resist doing it. And not only that, but the more complete your outline is, the easier it is to write your book. It's like fill in the blanks, you know, because you've laid it all out. You know exactly what you need to say. And then the third thing is creating a schedule in a very short amount of time. So I tend to write books in a block of time. And that's why I used to do it as a boot camp, and people would write it in 3 days over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the idea is that the longer you take to write your book, the less chance there is that you're ever going to finish it, because life gets in the way, you get bored, you grow, and then you don't want to write that book. Now you want to write a different book. So, you know, those are the things that make it easy. The things that make it hard are doing a brain dump, because then you just got all this information that's completely unorganized that you don't know what to do with. And that's the perfect recipe for stuckness, you know.
So you don't sort of recommend people grab Otter AI and start talking.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing that people will do is they'll do book research before they write the book. And again, 99% of the research is not going to end up being used in most cases. So write the book first from the outline and then see where you need research and then plug it in. That's going to make it go a lot faster. So those are my secrets to writing a book quickly.
And so how do you do the writing part quickly?
How do you do? Well, again, if you create the outline where you've got each chapter heading, right, and then you put your points under each one of those, then you just write it out. I mean, if your point is, give me a point. What's a point?
You're well, that, you know, let's say I was writing a book on branding. So maybe I'd want to write about how important is copywriting to your brand.
Okay, so how important is copywriting to your brand? So what are the points you would make underneath that? And so maybe you'd have 5 points, 6 points, 8 points, whatever those points are. And then you just go through each one, write a sentence or 2 on it, and then see, does that flow? Does it not flow? Do you need to, you know, kind of massage it to make it work better? For some people, they go, oh, I'm not a writer. Fine, so talk it. You know, some people are just more comfortable speaking than writing. Some people have been told they're a terrible writer, and so they think they're a terrible writer, you know, so it just depends. With me, I can write so much faster than I can do anything else. Like my brain is just ready to go, you know, and I can just write it out. And then, but even for me, I mean, it's like, then I come back and you reread it fresh later and you look at it and you go, okay, does this flow? Do I need to, you know, make some adjustments? And that's it. And then of course there's always, you know, editing later, but I never tell anybody to rely on editing. Like, you have to write the book. Editing can help. But one of the problems with editing is if you don't do what I just said, you know, where you write it and you then read it, feel the flow, and then make some tweaks to it, and you expect like an editor to do that, it's going to be very expensive.
Well,
gonna be an
and
expensive
probably
edit.
you won't get the book that you want, because they don't know your flow. They don't know.
Oh, you mean the editor?
Yeah.
Well, a
Yeah.
good editor will be able to get it, but still, it's a lot to ask of an editor to kind of rewrite your book.
So does everybody need an editor to write a book?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody needs an editor because you want it to be professional. I mean, there are a lot of books out there that are crappy, and self-published books, get a bad rap because so many of them are thrown together, but that doesn't mean that it has to be that way just because you're self-publishing. So, it's perfectly legitimate to self-publish, but make it a good book. And editing is part of that.
And so you have a good editing team or people that you refer people to?
I do have an editing team, and also occasionally I edit myself. I used to be a copy editor for magazines.
Oh, wow.
So if there's something I really want to read, I'm going to edit anyway while I'm reading. So I might as well just edit it.
And when you say write, do you handwrite or do you type?
No, I do it on the computer.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I started using a computer in the 1980s. And it was in those days, I was in the music business. And I can remember at first, I started out as a lyricist, and I would just handwrite everything. And, and then you'd make one mistake, and then you'd write another one, and you just keep adding a line here or there. And I was so resistant to doing it on a computer. I thought it would ruin my creativity. And once I got on the computer, I was like, oh my God, this is so liberating. I can take a whole section and just copy and paste it back in, and, then work on the next line, So, yeah. So whatever works for you, like I still write lyrics, and sometimes I write in bed and I still handwrite them out. But other times, like when I write books, I tend to write them on my computer.
Yeah. And do you add bits that you've dictated to things like an AI, or do you just make sure that you kind of write it all out?
Yeah, no, I just write it all out. But I was just, I have a group, a Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/books open doors. And on Tuesdays, I do Tech Tuesdays. And I literally just posted last week an AI that helps people write their books. So
Interesting.
there are ones that do that. I don't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but if you join the group, you can find it.
Cool. Well, I mean, AI is becoming so prevalent in everything that we write. I mean, people don't even recognize that it's there. If you use Gmail, for example, and Gmail said, will finish a sentence or give you a suggestion or something. Well, it's AI that did that. And, I never even think of it as AI. Some people get really freaked out by it.
I love it. I have something called Funnel Scripts, and it's amazing. It's really amazing. I mean, sometimes, like when I'm doing my own podcast and I can't think of a title, I'll use it for that. It'll create sales pages, printed and video ones, scripts for you. It does all kinds of amazing things.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, email sequences for following up, for retargeting, for all these different things. It's, sometimes it's just like hard to get started. And so if you use AI that way, where it'll ask you to plug in some information and then it'll spit it out for you, it's not perfect, but then you go back and you can play with it and get it more into your own voice. Of course, I don't know of one that writes a book for you, but I'm just saying that, like, for a lot of the other pieces, sometimes people get overwhelmed with, but you can use it for that.
Well, that's kind of cool because, I mean, it's sort of really wonderful to think that there are things that you can use to get you started, because that can sometimes be the hardest thing, because you sit there and you think, I don't know what to write. I mean, I can do it, and I write pretty easily, and it comes
I do too.
most of the time. But every once in a while I go, what do I want to write? And, you know, your brain kind of goes off the wrong way. To be able to give a couple of keywords to something AI and have them turn it into some sentences, all of a sudden your brain would click in again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
said funnel scripts. Does it do a lot of, is it primarily for sales funnels or is it anything?
Yeah. It's for everything other than writing a book,
Books.
pretty much. Yeah, I think.
I see.
Like I said, I mean, I don't write a sales page every day or anything like that. So I mean, I'm not in there like constantly, but like I said, just I use it for certain things. And it was not cheap. But I remember at the time thinking, I know this is going to be good. I just had that feeling and I was not disappointed.
Oh, that's great because
Yeah.
I mean, you know, trying to write sales pages and webinar pages and all
Oh,
that
that's the
kind of
stuff that's
things.
just for me. Oh my God, when I yeah, and I mean, and I've done many of them and I learned how to write sales pages from the best. I mean, I learned when I wrote my book with Jim Edwards, who also created funnel scripts. But it's I forgot what I was going to say about it because I'm looking for
Oh,
the
just
thing.
how hard it is to
Oh yeah, to get
when
started
you're
with a
trying to
sales
think of all
page.
your sales scripts and
Oh,
stuff.
sales pages, like to look at a blank page and think I have to start from scratch to write a sales page is just terrifying to me.
Well,
You know?
especially some of those long sales pages. I mean, fortunately, you don't see as much of them as you used to, but I mean, some of these sales pages, you're going
Go
on
on and
and
on. Yeah.
on and on, and it's like, all right, ready. Just tell me how much it is, would you?
Right. Absolutely.
It's sort of like some of those sales webinars. Anyway, so what primarily do your writers write about? Is there any sort of real focus or is it really all over the map?
Oh, well, it's interesting. I mean, over the years, I've done a lot of books with pastors, realtors, grief, laws of attraction, chiropractors, trainers, consultants, just, all kinds of different people. But generally, I just stay away from things that are boring, like accounting.
Hey, maybe there's a great book out there on how to make numbers sing or something.
I'm sure there is, but it isn't one I'd want to edit.
Nor necessarily want to read.
Yeah, or want to read, really. Yeah. No, I mean, my philosophy about books, first of all, a book saved my life, literally. So I got very sick around 2000. I started losing weight very quickly. Everything was turning toxic in my body. I couldn't keep food down. And Western medicine just didn't know what to do with me. And so my husband says, I'm not letting you die. And he got on the internet and he found this woman and she described what I was going through to a T. And I wanted to become her patient and she wasn't seeing patients anymore. And so, I mean, that was devastating. But anyway, but it turned out she'd written a book. And the book was called Detox or Die. And that's what I needed, was to detox. And so we followed the protocol and it saved my life.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was, very powerful. And on top of that, I'd always thought about writing a book, but I was one of these people that was like, well, someday I'll write a book. And then all of a sudden I'm 48 years old and I'm, clinging to life there. And you go, crap, you think you're invincible when you're young, you think you're going to live forever. And I was a kind of a late bloomer anyway. I didn't start my coaching business till I was 51. But all of a sudden it becomes more imperative, where you go, if this is something I want to do, I better like get my act together. And so that's when I decided I was going to write my first book. And so I went looking for a book coach who understood ebooks and digital, because this was like 2004. It still wasn't that prevalent. I mean, some people were already saying ebooks are dead, but right. And Kindle hadn't even been invented yet. But I'm like, no, I don't think ebooks are going to be dead. But I couldn't find anybody. And so I remember I ended up, well, I was taking a course called Teleseminar Secrets, and because I was learning internet marketing, because I was writing copy for people. That was like what I knew how to do, that I could get my foot in the door. So that was how I started. And he said that you don't make money from the book, you make money from teaching what's in the book. And so I hired a coach to teach me how to become a coach. And he had this little PDF on how to write an ebook. And so I went through the ebook and I said to him, based on my experience writing my first book, I said, I could make this better. Do you want to like split this, do a 50-50 and let me make it better? And he was like, no, just take it and do what you want. So that's what I did. And so that actually was the beginning of what is now Real Easy ebook workbook, a step-by-step guide to take your ebook from I did a bestseller. And yeah, and but that was the basis for it. And but it was frustrating because I really couldn't find a coach. There was like a book and there was a email course, and I'm like, but there are no coaches. I thought,
who can I ask questions of?
No, I was like, I think I could come up with something better. I think I could do this. This is right up my alley. And so that's what I did. So I created my own program and wrote my first book, which was actually before the Real Easy ebook workbook, and made a lot of the mistakes people make, and had a lot of the same doubts. And am I too old? And, do I know enough? And, how do I do this and all that? And I made a lot of the mistakes that a lot of authors make. I overspent on it, given that I didn't even have a business when I wrote the first one. So I wrote it about moving because that's what I knew how to do. We'd been buying, fixing, selling houses, living in them, and moving every 6 months. And I got really good at moving. But then I took a publicity course, and the guy was like, "Oh, you should be the moving doctor." And I was like, "Oh, shoot me. I don't want to be the moving doctor." So yeah, that just did not appeal to me at all. But so I spent a lot of money on that book, and it was kind of wasted because it wasn't tied to a business. I just wrote a book, the first one to write a book. As it turned out, it was good that I did it because it became my experience. Just in those days, there was nobody teaching it. So it became, this is what I did. These are the mistakes I made. And now I can teach you how to do it. And of course, over the years, I've just refined and refined and refined and,
to the point where now you actually know what you're talking about.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, it was, I made a lot of mistakes. And like I said, the big one was that I didn't have a business yet. So, I had someone come to me a few months ago and he wanted to write a book. And I said, "You're not ready to write a book." He hadn't worked with a single client yet. I said, "You need to work with clients and figure out what your process is. And then we can talk about writing a book, because the book should be tied to what your process is and what you're teaching and what you want people to know, so that they want to get into your email list and learn more from you, right? So that eventually you can sell them higher end programs." So, so not everyone who comes to me is right for writing a book, in my opinion, and I will not take people's money if I think it's not really the right time for them.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that you really wanted people to have a business, that when they write the book, that you kind of want it to focus or be somewhat related to their business. So,
well, it's just that they're going to spend a lot of money on a book, right? And when I say a lot of money, you can spend anywhere from, God, there are people who charge, 50,000, 100,000, but even with me, if you're going to spend 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000, it's an investment, and so that's a lot of money to spend when you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Well, but sometimes having spent a lot of money inspires you to get your ass and learn what you're doing.
Yeah, but a lot of times, then people do it, and I've seen this many times too, where if they don't have a business first and they're still trying to figure it out, and they're writing the book, and in the middle they're going, "I don't know. Oh, I'm kind of not excited now about this." I don't really want to finish this, you know, because they haven't committed to it yet.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's much better to be committed first.
Well, and I mean, it gives them a lot of reason, and they already know that it's going to add to their credibility and
Right.
make them better at what they're doing. So, I mean,
Right.
it's clearly a great, amazing add-on,
Right.
you know, if they've already gotten started, or they have a really good idea about what they know they're going to do,
Right.
and it can help them be the explainer. Like the book can be the start of their course or
Yeah.
the start of their program or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah, I've also worked with fiction writers, publishing for fiction writers. I don't teach fiction writing, but we've published for fiction writers as well. Yeah.
And how different a process is that in terms of getting it to be a bestseller?
Very little,
Oh, is that right?
very
Yeah.
little difference. Yeah, that's why I can do it. Yeah, no, if it were different, I wouldn't touch it. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Hmm.
I,
Yeah, I mean, really the only difference that I have found is like when we do bestseller launches, we tend to give away a free ebook for like a couple days. When we do it with a fiction book, we've made it all 5 days, taken all 5 days. And the reason is using it more to build the list
yeah.
for their next book. Like, you know, when they write a fiction book and it's a series. So they're using the first one as a leader, and then, you know, there'll be more books. So
And they sort of have that idea going in that this is
yeah,
going to be a first one.
right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, there's clearly a lot of different reasons that people might want to write a book.
Mhm.
And, you know, I mean, I picked up one because, of course, I'm always interested in influence. And, you know, the premise of that book was you can't be an influencer without a book. And, well, I'm not sure that that's true. It was just, you know, someone's
It's not
premise
that you
that,
can't be an influencer without a book. It's that you can be a bigger influencer and have a bigger impact with a book. I mean, the reason that we went to Books Open Doors as the name of the company is that that's what we saw happening over and over and over again for my clients. You know, was not just that they wrote this book and they can now say they were #1 bestseller, but all of a sudden they were getting opportunities that they couldn't get before. And they were making more money. And, you know, I was once blessed to be on a call where I was the guest speaker for guerrilla marketing. And I was on that call with Jay Conrad Levinson. And Jay said, someone had asked him how much he made from his book, and he said $1 million. He made $36,000 from selling books and $964,000 from all the other opportunities, courses, everything else that followed.
yeah, well,
And
he was definitely a marketer.
yeah, but the point is that the majority did not come from selling books, and it usually doesn't.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another
And
great story that I love is I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
no, go ahead.
Oh, Gary Keller of Keller Williams Realty. He wrote the book called The One Thing. And he was kind of in the second tier of realty companies. And so he went to his team and said, give me 100 things that we could do to get into that top tier, because we're not getting the respect and we're not getting, you know, where we want to be. And so they did that. And he said, okay, now whittle it down to 10, which they did. And they said, okay, now what's the one thing? And they said, the one thing is writing a book. And so that's what he did. He wrote the book, and now they're the #1 company.
Wow, that's amazing. That's quite the story.
Yeah. So, you know, a book is really powerful. It's really powerful, but unfortunately, too many people think, oh, it's hard. Oh, it's going to take too long. It doesn't have to. You know, it doesn't have to. And I really told you some of the secrets right at the beginning of this call. So if you follow those, you're already light years ahead of most authors.
Well, you know, when you were telling me about how my process is, you can do it in 3 days, I'm like, really?
Yeah. I mean, people are different, right? In that somebody who's just newer at teaching what they teach isn't going to know their material as well as somebody who's been teaching it for years and it's like they can do it in their sleep, right?
Right.
So you can't really compare yourself, but there's no reason why anybody cannot have an outline and a first draft in 3 days. You know, some of my clients are able, I mean, they're so good, they're able to like then just get right on Amazon and start selling. And other people, it's like, okay, well, that's my first draft. And other people, I had an 80-year-old great grandmother from Idaho once take the course, and she wrote it, she wrote a short book. That her first one was a short book. And but she was thrilled, because she realized, as all my people do, that the process that I teach you can use for anything. You can write articles, you can write giveaways, lead magnet PDFs, you can write books. I mean, it's a process of writing.
So since we're getting to the end of our time here, gosh, time does fly. What's the best way for people to reach you, Ellen?
The best way to reach me is to go to the website, booksopendoors.com. There's a contact thing there. You can also email me, Ellen at Books Open Doors. And like I said, I'd love for you to join. Yeah, and I'd love for you to join our Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/Books Open Doors. I do a lot of mini trainings in there. I do a live once a week. And there's networking. There's really great people in there. There's accountability if you need it. You can promote your books. So there's a lot going on in there.
Well, I'm going to come join that Facebook group for sure. Yay. Because I think it's kind of neat. And I've been thinking about the fact that it's probably somewhere along the line, sooner rather than later, I'm going to need to write a book. And so, yeah, you'll see me there.
Awesome. I'd love to help you.
Sounds great. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.